Joining us today, a very special guest. The Silver Ferns head coach, Dame Noeline Taurua, is in the Inside Netball house. Kia ora, kia koe, Dame Noeline Taurua.
Kia ora. Thank you for having me and good to be talking netball.
Exactly. We love it here at Inside Netball. Look, first of all, we want to start with selections, and it's been a very, funny old ANZ Premiership season with a lot of disruptions. Does that make it a bit trickier for you to at least pencil in a Commonwealth Games squad?
Oh, look, our pathway to the Silver Ferns is through ANZ, so we're very aware of that. But I think with what's happened over the last couple of years, our series that we've had last year with England and also the men's as well, we had quad series in January, and along that pathway we've had numerous camps. So ANZ was probably the final stages as we lead into the Commonwealth Games and to select trialists that are going to come together for the trials for selection. So we've had quite a few stages and ANZ was the last one. So I think for me it's just seeing what players can do. Have they learnt from those experiences of the international matches? Have they learnt from communications that we've had with them? And are they able to showcase that through ANZ week in, week out? So I think there's been telling signs of individuals and probably where they currently are sitting at the moment.
Noeline, you've had a change, I think, in the selection panel. How different is this squad that you're going to be picking? How different will it be, do you think, to the team you took away in January?
Yeah, look, that's a really interesting question in itself, and why I say that is that we've done numerous reviews, and not only within Netball New Zealand but also high performance sport around the Tokyo Olympics and why that was so successful. And the common message around that was around having players or having athletes who have experienced a pinnacle event or have a lot of test caps in our experience, and we've always looked back on players in that regard, and knowing that you don't want to take players who have not experienced that high echelon of performance. So I think to some degree we may have to change some of our thinking around selections, which is probably an element of risk to some degree, because we will be looking at players, I think, from what players are doing in ANZ and what they've been able to do in past series. And they haven't had pinnacle event experience. But also, to some degree, we can't throw the bathwater out with the baby on some of those who have and are experienced in the Silver Ferns. So we are discussing, I suppose, strategically what are the key factors that we need in each position. Also looking at the opposition as well. We've tracked Australia, England, Jamaica and South Africa for numerous events. We're looking closely at SSN at the moment and tracking players in that environment, and hopefully now we have a good information database, I think, of everybody in there. So I don't want to say that there ain't going to be no surprises from my end. There isn't. There may be from people who see it from the outside, but I would like to think that we're taking a strategic approach and squeezing the living daylights out of everybody that we have.
Knowles, there are lots of players in the current crop of ANZ players that are performing. Some of your experienced Silver Ferns are not. Will you pick on form, or will you pick hoping that they find form in your Silver Fern environment?
Yeah, I think that's been the beauty, if I'm going to be honest, of some of the players that we have had in the mix. And it's because I know whether they're experienced or not experienced, I know how they perform at that level within the New Zealand environment or the Silver Fern. So I know what that's like. And I also know sometimes that just because they're not good in one weekend or, one team or, something's not quite gelling for whatever reason, I am confident from what we do in the Silver Ferns and their involvement so far. So I think at the moment what we have done is definitely identify players who have been in the Silver Ferns who may not be quite at the level that they should be or expected, and really working with the clubs as to what we can do to either raise performance or put better supports around them. So we've identified that and we're working in that space actually now.
You spoke about, Noeline, players, could possibly be selected without having that Silver Ferns experience depending on performance. And we've seen a lot of National Netball League players step in as replacements for the ANZ Premiership. And we've always spoken about how that competition feeds our Silver Ferns. Are there any NNL players that are catching your eye, perhaps not for the squad right now, but for the future?
I think that's been one of the most exciting things, is that for the ANZ coaches and at that competition, they've had to look underneath at that NNL level and really focused on what the pathway is to the ANZ. And I think to some degree they've been forced to go into that thinking, which I think is always good. It's good for the Silver Ferns, it's good for ANZ and everybody involved. So I'm liking that. I think, when I look at, I can't remember her name, apologies, but the young girl stylist for Mystics, and, when Phoenix wasn't involved in the beginning of Mystics campaign, how she has come in and slotted in and around Michaela and also Sulu. So, she's one of those ones that we have been tracking for a few years now through New Zealand secondary schools and the work that has been done in the ETP. I think also with the ETP, which is the level underneath, there's alignment between the Silver Fern selectors and us, and looking at more deeper. But, whether it is the development squad, we also have the Fast Five that's happening in November, and ways that we can look to fast track some of these athletes, one, to promote them for ANZ, but also looking in the future for future Silver Ferns as well.
I think Cara Stith was the name you were looking for, Noeline.
Yes,
She actually said to me, she looked like a young Casey Korpua. But what I was going to ask you is, I was interested to see Stacey Marinkovic talks about, she picks her shooters and then looks to see what middies are the ones that feed them best. I mean, is that a process you'd go along with?
I think that's a really interesting philosophy and definitely understandable as to what way she's going to go. We're definitely looking at combinations as well, looking at feeds, which is really important. I'm not 100% sure if we have the supply of shooters that they have over there, and but I think it's an interesting thought and I can understand it. I think the key things for us in the units that we're looking for is definitely in the shooting, the volume and the accuracy. And, I think we've got some big volume shooters, obviously, with Alia and also Grace there. But the flip side to that is having goal attacks that are actually also putting up the volume. And sometimes when you've got strong goal shooters, you've got to keep the balance. Otherwise, you have goal attacks who are not wanting to go to the post. I think in our mid-court, we're really strong in the feeds. And also the goal assists, which are really clear on targets and benchmarks that have been set. And if anything, we're very comparable, if better, than what Australia are currently sitting at in their numbers. And of course, in our defence, what we're looking for is people who can turn over the ball, and the likes of Kelly Jury and Sulu and a few of the players who are currently doing that, that's looking promising. So, we're looking at statistics, we're looking at combinations, we're looking at behaviours, and, the people who can do that the best, I think will probably end up being selected for us.
Speaking of individuals, Noeline, I think one of the biggest question marks on who will make the squad this year is that of Emilian Ekanasio, of course, coming back after having Bubs. Have you been, I'm sure you have been watching her very closely, but is there, maybe some sort of plan or something in place to, I don't know, maybe not ensure that she gets there, but that she's on the right track to make that squad?
Yeah, look, I think putting this out there to everybody is, we've got our standards of our yo-yo, and we have discussed actually over the last month and probably questioned ourselves and really looked at ways, if I'm going to be honest, of not applying our standards that we set. So I know there's quite a few athletes who are not at the level physically, and where we have come back around after many discussions is that we will stay with the yo-yo that we have set. Because of a few reasons, but also the integrity of our program and knowing the load that needs to happen. So we are very aware of where athletes sit, not only her, but also others, and definitely with Amelia Ann putting the supports around her to help her to be the best athlete that she can be. So as we all know with mothers, that sometimes it becomes difficult in life and you have to balance everything. But I must say we've been discussing, continuously with her, and her intention is to be at Commonwealth Games. So time will tell whether we can get that done, but she's really important to us. And honestly, if it doesn't fall now, we will still keep her involved and definitely look for Netball World Cup. So like everybody, this is only one stage of the next 2 years that's really important for us.
Knowles, you must be watching an awful lot of netball at the moment. But to be honest, really, when it comes down to Birmingham, it's going to be, 4 or 5 games, and then it comes down to that semi-final and the final, and they're the two big ones. I mean, does that alter the way you select a team? Do you take a player and think, yeah, right, well, she can get us through the early ones, but then we need somebody for the big ones?
Yeah, look, once again, being honest, the truth is definitely that. So our big 3 is towards the end. Our big one definitely is England. So if we don't beat England, then we will play Australia in the crossovers. If we do beat England, we have Jamaica, and then obviously we got to get through Jamaica to play Australia in the finals. We're very mindful of what each team poses, definitely knowing where SSN is currently happening, with not only England probably being our difficult opposition over the last couple of years that we haven't quite cracked.
How many players could now, on your hands, you say that that have got the tick? Half? More than half?
Yeah, I would say, look, I think I change from week to week, if I'm going to be honest. I had started and I'm very strong on having a spine, and in the spine we have 4 players, and to be honest, once again, in that spine there are risks. So I'm very aware of that and the supports that need to go in and around these players. You've got to have a spine to start building everything else around that. And so I'm very open and honest about that. But in some weeks I feel quite good about a good 6. And then the next game I don't. So I think to some degree the uncertainty, or there's one way of looking at uncertainty, or the other side of it, the opportunities that present for people. So I think it's to some degree nearly throw their hat up and for people really to put your best foot out, because I think if anything, it's open, not open slather, but it's open for people to put their best foot out and to perform and to be a Silver Fern in a pinnacle event. So we want to drive those performances, and people have to put their hand up and deserve to be there.
Awesome, Noeline. Look, I think I speak for all of us when I say we don't envy your position right now heading towards the Commonwealth Games, but thank you so much for your time and your great insight into selecting the Silver Ferns for the Commonwealth Games.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Niles.